All right. So I'm supposed to be talking on trabeculectomies in primary angle closure glaucoma. I'm sorry, the camera on my office desktop has refused to work. So I'll be presenting it from the desktop, and then we can have a discussion from my phone.
Yes.
I think all of us sort of think that angle closure glaucoma looks like the picture on the upper right, where there is, a very thick anteriorly placed lens and a completely occluded angle. However, most of our patients, probably almost 80 to 85% of our patients, look like the picture on the left side with a very narrow angle without a very anteriorly positioned or thick lens. So please remember that exaggerated lens vault probably accounts for only about 20% at the most of primary angle closure glaucomas that we see in India. Where would we think of trabeculectomies? I think we're thinking of acute angle closure, where on maximal medical therapy, IOP doesn't get controlled in 3 or 4 days. In chronic angle closure glaucoma, in patients who are allergic to most glaucoma medications. And sometimes there are patients who come to you and say, I cannot afford the medication. Please do surgery so that my eye can be saved. So I'm again reiterating that all angle closure disease eyes have pupillary block to a greater or a lesser extent. And you can see it by the fact that there is always a space. You can see whichever eye you look at, there is a space between the iris and the lens. So that is the relative pupillary block. In some patients, it may be more, in some patients less. How often are we likely to see plateau iris? Probably between 8 to 23%. How often are we going to see an exaggerated lens vault? And how often are we going to see a prominent last roll of the iris? So you can see that the others are there, should be considered, but they are not seen in the majority of eyes. Coming back to chronic angle closure glaucoma, where we would be thinking in terms of doing some kind of surgery, what we are as part of the definition using is that there should be extensive synechia, there should be a chronically raised IOP, and there should be some visual field loss. So what you can actually see when you look at these eyes, if you look at them on gonioscopy, you can see that this is a completely closed eye. Despite any manipulation, it is not opening. Here you again have a completely closed eye, but there is a little bit of pigmentation anteriorly, giving you a false impression of trabecular meshwork, while actually it's just pigmentation on the cornea. So if you were to look at them histopathologically, and again, I'm showing you in this picture what you actually see on the surface of the trabecular meshwork, you can see that there are no spaces left. All these are basically just trabecular beams which have got fused together. There are no spaces for the IOP, for the aqueous to drain out. Similarly, if we do a transmission electron microscopy, you will find that the beams are all stuck to one another. And again, there are no spaces. So when we consider what we should do in such eyes, as we've already discussed, we think about medications. And I think Chandrima has spoken about them very nicely. And I think at this point in time, we do have timolol, which is actually part of combinations with pilocarpine. So you could think of pilocarpine timolol combination with the PGI and then add on any of the others, the brimonidine carbonic anhydrase inhibitors, or now the Ripotec. So what we actually do is, with the medications, bringing the intraocular pressure reasonably well controlled, we do an iridotomy, and then we look to see whether any of the other target IOP, depending on the visual field, is met or not met. And if it is achieved without any significant side effects of the medications, you're well within your rights to continue. However, when the target IOP is not achieved is when we are looking for trabeculectomies. And just as a rule of thumb, after studying hundreds of these PSEG eyes, what we found was that if the baseline IOP was less than 30, you could get medical control even in very severely damaged PSEG eyes. But however, if it was more than 30, you required surgery most of the time in all the severe glaucomas, but also in about half the moderate glaucomas. So where would you consider a cataract surgery alone? So as I was saying that, this is a picture of a very exaggerated lens vault. You can see the angle is still open, and you do a lens extraction and the angle opens beautifully. So what you actually have here is a scenario where in a primary angle closure suspect, you have done a lens extraction, the iris has fallen back, your trabecular meshwork is exposed. However, if you have a trabecular meshwork, which as I already explained to you in primary angle closure looks like this, if this is not working, the cosmetic falling back of the iris is not going to increase the outflow of the aqueous. I think there are many studies that have actually shown that there is actually no evidence from good quality trials saying that there is an effectiveness of lens extraction for chronic primary angle closure glaucoma. These are 2 Cochrane reviews. And this is a paper that I would ask all of you to look at, because he said that, yes, okay, you may have a little bit of an IOP control, but almost 10% lost significant vision after cataract surgery, because it isn't an easy surgery to do in an eye that looks like this. So finally, we come to the EAGLE study. I think everybody talks about the EAGLE study, saying, oh, you know, the EAGLE study has shown us that it is effective. Now, effective in what? The question is, they took PAC eyes, they took mild to moderate PACG eyes, and the aim in their initial publication was the efficacy in terms of IOP control, safety, and cost effectiveness. When they presented their results, they said it's very cost effective, it's safe, and the quality of life is good. They didn't talk about the efficacy at all. So you can judge by that, you know, they were obviously not very happy with their results. And they have said that the IOP difference between just an iridotomy and medication versus a clear lens extraction was 1 millimeter. And in their own paper, where the results of the EAGLE is published, they say that this difference is not clinically significant. So I think this is something for all of us to tell people that, yes, you can get the iris to fall back, but you are not going to get a significant drop in intraocular pressure, especially in our eyes where we are starting at, you know, 30, 32, 36 kind of pressures. This 1 millimeter is a drop in the ocean. They found that there was no difference in the visual field or synechia, no difference in the questionnaires they gave. But as they said, it was cost effective, and the patients was happy because sclerosis, an eye with a cataract and some sort of mild lenticular sclerosis, began to see colors better, began to see clarity better. All right, so they only said that the patients, when asked, said that they were happier once the cataract surgery was done. In the other group of almost 300 eyes, only 6% actually needed cataract surgery over 3 years. So you can see that the clear lens extraction was done unnecessarily in 94% of the eyes. It gave no benefit as far as the IOP was concerned, and it gave unnecessary risks. I'm just going to give you this, one of our patients. This lady came to us many years ago, and you can see that, you know, one eye has remained absolutely stable. And this was the position of her other eye. She was quite stable in the other eye as well, till she underwent a cataract surgery, following which she had corneal problems, she had a raised IOP, she had many other problems. And by the time we could clear it enough for her to repeat a field, this is what her field looked like. And this is not the only patient. We have many patients of PACG who have lost significant vision after cataract surgery. So be a little bit cautious of the limitations of cataract surgery in primary angle closure glaucoma. So coming to trabeculectomy, I think it lowers the IOP significantly. It's long lasting. It's been shown with 10, 20-year results, more than 90% success, even if you have to give 1 or 2 medications. Only 1 to 2% of the AC is shallowed. Only 6% required cataract surgery. 3% required a repeat filtering surgery. It's easy to learn. Anybody can do it if they learn to do it properly. There are many ways in which a trabeculectomy works, and I'm not going to go over too many for you. But what I'd like to say is this is what I would like to see a PACG eye on the first post-op day, with the AC well formed and the air bubble nice and mobile. This is how we would like to see it maybe a year, 2 years, 10 years later. So I'm just going to highlight a few things that we need to be careful about. We need to do this surgery in a quiet eye with IOPs well controlled. So even if you have to wait a week or so to drop the pressure that is 32, 34 and bring it down to 24, you must take that time. Must give an IV mannitol at least half an hour prior to the trabeculectomy. Make your flap whichever way you want to make your flap, make your scleral flap whichever way you want to make it. But in angle closure, there was a time where we actually dissected right up to the clear cornea. Please make sure that you stop. You don't go right up to the clear cornea. When you place your mitomycin, use the minimum amount of mitomycin for the shortest duration. And I think this has been what we have used for the last 15 years, 0.1 or 0.2 subconjunctivally for 1 minute. You will find that most of your complications reduce. A paracentesis is absolutely essential because what it does is, again, it lowers the IOP. It prevents the vitreous and the lens coming forward and causing either a suprachoroidal hemorrhage or a malignant glaucoma in the long term. It also gives you a track which is available to reform the AC immediately, or in the 1% or 2% in whom you might require to do it post-op. So when you take the full thickness ostium, again, both on both sides, please try and do another paracentesis to lower the IOP. And you only remove it when you can actually find a really soft eye. Once you have a soft eye, you remove the ostium. Scleral sutures, I generally place 2 fixed corneal sutures, but what I would like to emphasize is the use of releasable sutures, because these control the AC and the intraocular pressure post-op, because we don't want a pressure of 4 and 5 on the first post-op day. We would like it to be maintained sort of about between 10 and 15 for the first week or so. You have to, I particularly like to use this kind of box type suture, and I'll describe it to you in a minute, but you know that there are many other kinds of sutures that are available. And the reason why I like this is because when we did a study of how the aqueous actually comes out of the eye, you can see that most of the aqueous comes out immediately adjacent to the limbus. And this is because the iridectomy is here, the ciliary processes are just behind. So this is where it tends to come out. So if you can put a box type suture like this, it is going to prevent this from coming out and push the aqueous a little further back and make it a little bit more difficult. So just a short video to show you. You come from the cornea, come between the superficial flap that has been made. There's a little ledge that you leave there. Take it out through that ledge. Pass it through the superficial flap, because we want to keep the superficial flap and that ledge as close together as possible. And then you come back again and pass it back towards the cornea. So what you have is you have a mattress type or a box type sort of suture over there. Make it really tight. There may be a little astigmatism. We're not worried because we're going to remove it as quickly as we can. And you do the same thing on the other eye. It's easy to just take out whenever you feel the IOP is well controlled. Again, this is just the same thing, showing the needle coming here through the superficial flap and back. So basically what we are doing is we have now just pushed everything back to where it was, superficial flap to the ledge, and this is completely tied up in a very tight suture. I won't show you the others. I think you know how other sutures are done. Close your wound as quickly as possible. Intraoperative complications, you must take care of any sort of buttonholing there may be and hope that doesn't occur. IV mannitol will prevent these from occurring during the surgery. Post-operatively, I would suggest you dilate the iris fully, and then we give tropicamide drops once a day with an iPad at night for 1 week, because these are the eyes that are prone to develop a shallow anterior chamber. Releasable suture removal, we tend to do within 2 or 3 weeks. But what you have to do is to look both at the bleb as well as the AC. And you can see this huge elevated bleb. There is no way we are going to remove any releasable sutures here. If, however, this is the kind of localized congested eye that you're going to see, you are definitely going to remove the releasable sutures. And once you remove the suture, it is easily, the entire bleb becomes much larger. So I'm now going to just go.
No, madam, you continue.
No. So I'm just going
because this is a part of interaction itself.
Oh, okay. All right. So I'm going to say that, at 10 years, what we found was that the percentage reduction in IOP with medications was about 40%. With surgery, it was 60%. It was actually, there are many studies which are showing us that trabeculectomy at 5 years, at 1 year, at 3 years are very effective. Complications are similar to PSCG. And even if you want to do a phaco trap, the phaco trap does better than just a phaco alone. You will get thin walled blebs, and all you need to do is to remove this epithelium, and you will get a bleb revision with a good control in IOP because the bleb is spared. So I would like to end up saying probably about 1 or 2 out of 100 may require a repeat surgery. You may find that about 10 to 12 may require some medications, but it's worth it for a safe, long-lasting surgery. Thank you.